The morning air bit at Lucas Chen's face as he stepped out of his cabin. 5 years he'd been living up here in the Colorado Rockies, and he still wasn't used to how quiet it was. Not the bad kind of quiet that makes your ears ring, just peaceful. The kind of silence that lets you hear your own thoughts, whether you want to or not. He pulled his worn jacket tighter and looked out at the valley below. Snow covered everything like a thick blanket, sparkling in the early sunlight. His cabin sat about 3 miles up the mountain, far enough that he couldn't see another building from his porch. That's exactly how he wanted it. Lucas walked over to his workshop, a small shed he'd built himself the first year he moved up here. Inside, half-finished pieces of furniture waited for him. A rocking chair that needed sanding, a bookshelf missing its final coat of stain, a small toy chest he'd started carving animals into, though he wasn't sure why. Nobody up here needed a toy chest. He picked up his tools and got to work. The rhythm of it calmed him. Sand, check, sand again. His hands knew what to do without him having to think about it. That was the best part about woodworking. Your mind could wander or it could go blank. Either way, something useful came out of it. By noon, his stomach reminded him he'd skipped breakfast. Lucas put down his sandpaper and headed back to the cabin. Inside, everything was neat and organized. 1 plate, 1 cup, 1 bowl. A small table with a single chair. Books lined up on a shelf he'd made himself. No television, no radio. Just a battery-powered emergency radio he kept charged in case of weather warnings. He made himself a sandwich and ate it standing by the window, looking out at the mountains. Sometimes he went days without saying a single word out loud. His voice would sound strange to him when he finally did speak, like it belonged to someone else. After lunch, Lucas checked his supplies. He was running low on coffee, bread, and a few other basics. That meant a trip to town. He only went once a month, sometimes less if he could stretch things. Pine Ridge was about 45 minutes down the mountain road, longer when snow slowed things down. He didn't mind the town itself. The people were friendly enough, the kind who'd nod and say hello but didn't pry into your business. That suited Lucas just fine. He'd answer if someone asked him a question, but he never volunteered information about himself. Most folks in Pine Ridge knew him as that quiet guy from up the mountain. That was all they needed to know. Lucas grabbed his keys and headed to his old pickup truck. The engine complained in the cold but turned over after a few tries. He let it warm up while he scraped ice off the windshield. Then he started the careful drive down the mountain. The road wound back and forth, dropping slowly toward the valley. Lucas took his time, knowing that rushing on these mountain roads was how people ended up in trouble. He'd seen it before. Young drivers thinking they could speed through the curves only to find their car sliding toward the edge. Search and rescue would have to come pull them out, assuming they were lucky enough to be pulled out alive. He pushed that thought away. Those were old memories from a different life. Pine Ridge appeared around a final curve, a small cluster of buildings tucked into the valley. The town had one main street with a general store, a diner, a post office, and a handful of other shops. Maybe 300 people lived here year-round, more in the summer when tourists came through. Lucas parked in front of the general store and grabbed his shopping list. Inside, the warmth hit him immediately, along with the smell of coffee and wood smoke from the potbelly stove in the corner. Old Mr. Peterson stood behind the counter reading a newspaper. "Afternoon, Lucas," Peterson said, glancing up. "Cold one today." "Sure is," Lucas replied, grabbing a basket. He walked through the aisles, picking up what he needed. Coffee, bread, canned goods, batteries. He was reaching for a bag of rice when he heard it. "I'm sorry, sweetie, but we'll have to put some of this back." Lucas glanced over. A woman stood at the counter with 2 children, a girl about 10 and a younger boy, maybe 7. The woman was going through items on the counter, her face tight with worry. She picked up a jar of peanut butter and handed it back to Peterson. "We don't really need this," she said quietly. "Mom, but that's for my lunches," the girl said. "I know. Mia, we'll figure something out." The boy tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Are we still getting the medicine for my breathing?" "Yes, Tommy, that we're definitely getting." The woman's voice was firm, but Lucas could hear the strain in it. She pulled out a small stack of bills and started counting. Lucas moved to another aisle, but he kept watching. The woman put back more items. A box of pasta. A bag of apples. The kids stayed quiet, but their faces showed they understood. They were used to this. Something twisted in Lucas's chest. He recognized that look. The look of a parent trying to hold everything together while the world pushed back. Trying to make sure the kids didn't go without, even if it meant going without herself. He finished his shopping quickly and moved to the counter. The woman and her children were leaving, the boy carrying a small bag while his mother counted change in her hand. "Peterson," Lucas said quietly when they were out the door. "Those groceries they put back. Add them to my bill." Peterson looked up, surprised. "You sure about that, Lucas?" "Yeah, put them in a separate bag. Tell her someone already paid for them. She just forgot to take them. Don't tell her it was me." "That's real kind of you." Lucas shrugged. "Just do it quiet-like. I don't want to fuss." He paid for everything, including the extra groceries, and waited while Peterson bagged it all up. Through the window, Lucas could see the woman loading her kids into an old sedan that had seen better days. One taillight was held on with tape. "They're new to town," Peterson said, following Lucas's gaze. "Rachel Winters moved here about 6 weeks ago with those 2 kids. Husband passed away last year, I heard. She's working at the diner trying to make ends meet." Lucas didn't respond. He just nodded and took his bags. "Hold on," Peterson said. "Let me catch them before they leave." The store owner grabbed the bag of groceries and headed outside. Lucas watched through the window as Peterson jogged over to the car and tapped on the window. He couldn't hear what was said, but he saw the woman's face change from confusion to disbelief to something that looked like she might cry. She shook her head, probably saying she couldn't accept it, but Peterson insisted, putting the bag in her back seat. The little boy pressed his face against the window, smiling. The girl Mia waved in the direction of the store even though she didn't know who to wave at. Lucas turned away and headed to his truck. His chest felt tight. He loaded his groceries quickly and started the engine, eager to get back up the mountain. The drive back felt longer than usual. Lucas kept seeing that woman's face, the way she'd had to choose between peanut butter and apples, the way the kids had stayed so quiet, not complaining. They were good kids. They deserved better than counting pennies for basic groceries. But that wasn't his problem, was it? He'd helped. He'd done what he could. Now he could go back to his cabin, back to his quiet life, and that would be that. Except it didn't feel like that. When Lucas got home, he unpacked his groceries in silence. He made dinner, ate it, and washed his single plate. Then he sat at his small table and pulled out a leather journal. He'd been keeping it for years, writing down his thoughts when they got too loud in his head. He opened to a fresh page and stared at it for a long time before writing. Saw a family today in town, mother with 2 kids, barely scraping by. The boy had breathing problems, needed medicine. They were putting back food to afford it. I paid for what they couldn't take. Peterson will tell them someone already covered it. They'll never know it was me. He paused, then kept writing. The boy was about 7, same age Danny would have been. The girl reminded me of Lily, the way she stood close to her mother trying to be brave. It's been 5 years since the accident. 5 years since I couldn't save them. 5 years living up here alone because I couldn't face a world where they weren't in it. Lucas's hand shook slightly as he wrote. He took a breath and continued. Sometimes I wonder what I'm doing up here, building furniture nobody sees, living in silence. Is this what they would have wanted for me? I don't know. I just know I can't go back to how things were. Back when I was part of a team, helping people, thinking I made a difference. What difference did any of it make when I couldn't save my own family? He closed the journal and put it away. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the snow orange and pink. It was beautiful up here, peaceful, safe, lonely. Lucas shook his head. No point thinking like that. He'd made his choice. This was his life now. Simple, quiet, away from everything that could hurt him again. The groceries he'd bought for that family, that was just a moment. A small thing. She'd never know, the kids would never know, and that was fine. He didn't need thanks. He didn't need anything. He got ready for bed early, like he always did. No reason to stay up when morning came, whether you were ready or not. As he lay there in the dark, he thought about the little boy's smile when he saw the extra groceries. The mother's relief. The girl's wave, such a small thing. $40, maybe $50. Nothing that would change his life. But maybe it changed theirs, at least for a day or two. Lucas closed his eyes. Tomorrow he'd go back to his routine, his woodworking, his silence, his safe, predictable life on the mountain. He had no way of knowing that in 3 weeks, he'd see that family again under very different circumstances. No way of knowing that the small kindness he'd shown today was just the beginning of something much bigger. No way of knowing that the quiet life he'd built was about to be shattered in a way that would test everything he thought he'd left behind. But tonight none of that mattered. Tonight Lucas Chen slept in his cabin on the mountain, alone with his thoughts and his memories, believing that his small gesture had gone unnoticed, and that his life would continue exactly as it had for the past 5 years. He was wrong about both things. 3 weeks passed on the mountain, and Lucas fell back into his routine like nothing had changed. Wake up before dawn, check the weather, work on furniture in his shop, eat simple meals, write in his journal, sleep, repeat. But something had changed, even if he didn't want to admit it. He thought about that family more than he should, wondered if the boy's breathing was better, if the mother had found some relief, even temporary, if the girl was getting enough to eat for her school lunches. He told himself it didn't matter. He'd done his part. They were strangers, and strangers they'd stay. The weather had been getting worse over those 3 weeks. November in the Rockies could be unpredictable, but this year felt particularly harsh. The forecasts on his emergency radio kept warning about a major storm system moving in. Lucas had been through plenty of mountain winters. He knew how to prepare. He spent the afternoon of the 3rd week chopping extra firewood and stacking it on his covered porch. The sky had that heavy gray look that meant snow was coming, and lots of it. The temperature had dropped fast and the wind was picking up. By evening, the first flakes started falling. Lucas made dinner and sat by his window watching the snow come down. It was beautiful in its own way, how it covered everything, made the world look clean and new. But he knew the danger behind that beauty. People got caught in storms like this. People died in weather like this, thinking they could make it just a little further before it got too bad. He thought about his satellite phone, broken for the past month. He'd been meaning to get it fixed on his last trip to town, but he'd been distracted. He made a mental note to take care of it after the storm passed. Up here, being cut off from communication wasn't just inconvenient. It could be deadly. The snow fell harder as night came on. Lucas could barely see 20 feet past his window now. He checked his supplies one more time, made sure his emergency kit was ready, then settled in to wait out the storm. He'd done it dozens of times before. Around midnight, something woke him. Lucas sat up in bed, listening. At first, he thought maybe a branch had fallen on the roof from the weight of the snow, but then he heard it again. A sound that didn't belong, not the wind, not snow sliding off trees. A crash. Metal on rock. Distant, but distinct. Lucas got out of bed and went to the window. He couldn't see anything through the blowing snow. Maybe he'd imagined it. Maybe it was just the storm playing tricks. He stood there for a long moment, listening. Then he heard something else. Faint, almost swallowed by the wind. But there, a car horn. Short bursts. Someone was in trouble. His chest tightened. Every instinct told him to ignore it, go back to bed, tell himself it was nothing. But that horn kept going. Short, desperate blasts. A signal. Lucas was pulling on his clothes before he'd made a conscious decision to help. Heavy pants, thermal layers, his warmest jacket, boots, gloves. He grabbed his emergency pack, the one he'd kept ready from his old search and rescue days. Flashlight, rope, first aid kit, emergency blanket, flares. He hadn't used this pack in 5 years, hadn't wanted to, but his hands remembered how to check everything, make sure it was all there. The cold hit him like a wall when he stepped outside. The snow was already knee-deep and still coming down hard. Visibility was almost zero. Lucas clicked on his flashlight and started moving in the direction of the sound. The horn had stopped. That was either good or very bad. He pushed through the snow, following the mountain road that wound down from his cabin. His legs burned with the effort, and the wind tried to push him back with every step. The beam of his flashlight barely cut through the white curtain of snow. Then he saw it. Tire tracks leading off the road. Fresh, not yet completely filled in by the snow. Lucas followed them to the edge and pointed his flashlight down. About 30 feet below, wrapped around a pine tree, was a car. The old sedan with the taped taillight. He recognized it immediately. "No," Lucas breathed. His heart hammered in his chest. He shouted down, "Hello? Can you hear me?" Nothing. Just the wind and snow. Lucas secured his rope to a nearby tree and started climbing down. The slope was steep and icy. He had to move carefully, testing each step. One slip and he'd end up at the bottom with broken bones or worse. When he finally reached the car, he could see the damage. The front end was crumpled against the tree. The passenger side door was smashed in. Steam rose from under the hood. Lucas aimed his flashlight through the driver's window. Rachel Winters was slumped over the steering wheel, blood on her forehead. In the back seat, both kids were crying. Mia had her arms around Tommy, trying to comfort him even though she looked terrified herself. Lucas yanked open the back door. "Are you hurt? Can you move?" Mia looked up at him with wide eyes. "My mom won't wake up. We were trying to get to the hospital for Tommy's breathing and we slid off the road and she hit her head and now she won't wake up." Tommy was wheezing badly, his small chest working hard for each breath. His lips had a bluish tint even in the dim light. Lucas's training kicked in. "Okay, listen to me. I'm going to help you, but I need you to be brave. Can you do that?" Both kids nodded. He checked Rachel first. She was breathing but unconscious, a nasty gash above her eye. Possible concussion, maybe worse. She needed a hospital. Tommy needed a hospital. They were miles from anywhere in the middle of a blizzard and his phone was broken. Lucas made a decision. There was no choice, really. They couldn't stay here. The car's engine was dying, which meant no heat. Tommy's breathing was getting worse by the minute. Rachel needed medical attention, and nobody knew they were here. "All right," he said, his voice steady even though his mind was racing. "We're going to the hospital. It's about 15 miles from here. I'm going to get you there." "But how?" Mia asked. "The car won't work." Lucas was already moving, assessing what he could use. The back seat had blankets. He grabbed them all. In the trunk, he found a flat piece of metal, part of the spare tire kit. Not ideal, but it would work. He fashioned a makeshift sled using the metal and rope from his pack. It wasn't pretty, but it would hold them. He carefully moved Rachel onto it first, wrapping her in blankets. Then he helped the kids on, Mia holding Tommy close to keep him warm. "This is going to be a long trip," Lucas told them. "I need you to stay on the sled no matter what. Keep your brother warm. Can you do that, Mia?" "Yes, sir," she whispered. Lucas secured them all with rope, making sure they wouldn't slide off. Then he grabbed the front of the sled and pulled. It was heavy, much heavier than he'd expected. The metal scraped against the snow and caught on every root and rock. His shoulders burned within minutes, but he kept pulling. The storm wasn't letting up. If anything, it was getting worse. Lucas navigated by memory and instinct, knowing the general direction of the main road. If he could get them to the main road, maybe a snowplow would come through. Maybe someone would see them. Hours passed. Lucas's legs felt like they were on fire. His lungs burned from breathing the cold air. Sweat froze on his face, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Behind him, he could hear Mia talking softly to Tommy, trying to keep him calm. "It's okay, Tommy. This man is going to help us. Mom's going to be fine. Just breathe slow like the doctor showed you." Lucas's foot caught on something under the snow and he went down hard, face first. For a moment he just lay there, tasting blood in his mouth. Every muscle in his body screamed at him to stop, to rest. Just for a minute. "Mister?" Mia's small voice came from behind him. "Are you okay?" He pushed himself up. "I'm fine, just slipped." But he wasn't fine. His body was reaching its limits. He'd been pulling this sled for what felt like hours through deep snow in sub-zero temperatures. He was a 42-year-old man who spent most of his time sitting in a workshop, not the trained rescue worker he used to be. Lucas grabbed the rope again and kept going. One step, then another. Don't think about the distance. Don't think about how tired you are, just the next step. He thought about his own family, about the day he couldn't save them, the climbing accident that took them both while he was miles away on another rescue call. He'd spent 5 years running from that failure. hiding on a mountain, telling himself he was done trying to save people. But here he was, pulling a sled through a blizzard. Because what else could he do? Leave them to freeze? Let that little boy suffocate? Let their mother die from her injuries? No, not again. He wouldn't fail again. The night dragged on. Lucas lost track of time. Everything became a blur of white snow, burning muscles, and the sound of his own harsh breathing. He fell twice more. Each time it got harder to stand back up. Each time Mia's worried voice, asking if he was okay, gave him the strength to keep going. Tommy's wheezing was getting worse. Lucas could hear it over the wind. The boy was running out of time. How much further? Mia asked at one point. Lucas had no idea. He'd lost his sense of direction in the storm. He might be going in circles for all he knew, but he couldn't tell her that. Not much further, he lied. You're doing great, both of you, just hold on. His legs were starting to go numb. That was bad. Really bad. He couldn't feel his toes anymore. His fingers were stiff inside his gloves. His face had stopped hurting from the cold, which meant frostbite was setting in. Dawn started to break, though you could barely tell through the storm. Gray light instead of black. Lucas had been pulling the sled for over 6 hours. Then his leg buckled. Just gave out under him. He went down, the rope slipping from his hands. For a long moment he couldn't move. Couldn't think. His body was done. It had nothing left. Mister? Mia's voice was terrified now. Please, get up. Please. Tommy's breathing is really bad. Lucas closed his eyes. He was so tired. More tired than he'd ever been in his life. It would be so easy to just stay here. Just rest. But then he heard Tommy's labored breathing, heard Mia crying softly, heard Rachel's unconscious form shifting under the blankets. With a sound that was more animal than human, Lucas forced himself to his feet. His legs shook, his vision swam, but he bent down, grabbed that rope, and pulled. One more step, just one more, then another. The storm started to ease slightly as full morning came. Lucas could see a little further now. And there, through the snow, he saw something that made his heart leap. Tire tracks. Fresh ones. The main road. He pulled harder, finding strength he didn't know he had left. They made it to the road just as he heard the most beautiful sound in the world. The rumble of a diesel engine. A snowplow. Lucas dropped the rope and stumbled into the middle of the road, waving his arms. The plow's lights found him, and the engine sound changed as it started to slow. He tried to walk back to the sled, but his legs wouldn't work anymore. He fell again, this time unable to get back up. The world started to go dark around the edges. The last thing Lucas heard before everything went black was Mia's voice, calling for help, and the sound of the plow driver's door opening. He'd done it. They were safe. Someone else would take care of them now. Lucas let the darkness take him. Pain woke Lucas up. Sharp, burning pain that shot through his legs like electricity. He tried to move and immediately regretted it. Everything hurt. His shoulders, his back, his hands, but his legs were the worst. Easy there, a voice said. Don't try to move yet. Lucas opened his eyes. White ceiling. Bright lights. The smell of antiseptic. Hospital. He was in a hospital. His mind felt foggy, like he was thinking through cotton. The family, he managed to croak out. His throat was raw. The woman and the kids. A nurse came into view, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. They're okay. You saved them. Now you need to rest. The boy. His breathing. Tommy's stable. They got him on medication in time. Rachel, that's the mother. She had a concussion, but she's awake now. The little girl, Mia, she hasn't stopped asking about you. The nurse checked something on a monitor next to his bed. You gave everyone quite a scare. Do you remember what happened? Lucas tried to piece it together. The storm. The crashed car. Pulling the sled. His legs giving out. Then nothing. I fell, he said. On the road. There was a snowplow. The driver called it in immediately, said he'd never seen anything like it. You pulled those 3 people 15 miles through a blizzard. She shook her head. The doctors want to talk to you about your legs. That's when Lucas really focused on the pain. He tried to wiggle his toes. Nothing. Fear crept up his spine. What's wrong with my legs? The nurse's expression changed. The doctor will explain everything. Let me go get him. She left, and Lucas was alone with his thoughts and the steady beep of the heart monitor. He stared at the ceiling, trying to move his feet again. He could feel them, sort of. But they wouldn't respond the way they should. A doctor came in a few minutes later, a tall man with gray hair and a serious face. He pulled up a chair next to Lucas's bed. I'm Dr. Patel. You're a very lucky man, though you might not feel like it right now. He pulled out a tablet and showed Lucas some x-rays. You have multiple fractures in both legs. Your left leg has 3 breaks, your right has 2. You also have severe frostbite on your toes and fingers, though we think we caught it in time to prevent amputation. Lucas stared at the images. His bones looked like someone had taken a hammer to them. How did this happen? I don't remember breaking my legs. Dr. Patel pulled up more images. From what we can piece together, and from what the little girl told us, there was a steep, icy slope about 2 miles from where the snowplow found you. You slid down it with the sled. The girl said you used your body to keep them from going too fast to keep the sled from flipping. You essentially used your legs as brakes. Lucas had a vague memory of that. The slope. The ice. Knowing if they went down too fast, the sled would tumble and they'd all be hurt. He remembered making a choice. Remembered pain, but pushing through it. Then you dragged them another 2 miles using just your arms, Dr. Patel continued. On 2 broken legs, the amount of damage that did, the pain you must have been in, most people would have passed out immediately. I had to get them to help, Lucas said simply. Yes. Well, you did that. But now we need to talk about your recovery. The doctor's face grew more serious. We've done surgery to set the bones with pins and plates. You'll heal. But it's going to take time. Months of physical therapy. And I need to be honest with you. There's a good chance you'll have permanent mobility issues. You might need canes or other assistance to walk. The damage was severe. The words hit Lucas like a physical blow. He'd spent 5 years on that mountain, working with his hands, hiking, being independent. Now that might all be gone. How long until I can walk? We're looking at 8 to 12 weeks before you can even try putting weight on them. Then months of therapy after that. Dr. Patel's expression softened. I know this isn't what you want to hear, but you're alive. Those 3 people are alive because of what you did. That counts for something. After the doctor left, Lucas lay there staring at the ceiling. 8 to 12 weeks. Months of therapy. Permanent mobility issues. He thought about his cabin 3 miles up a mountain. Thought about his workshop, the furniture he made, the solitary life he'd built. All of it might be impossible now. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. The nurse poked her head in. You have some visitors. Are you up for it? Before Lucas could answer, Mia appeared in the doorway. Her face lit up when she saw him awake. You're okay. She rushed to his bedside, then stopped, suddenly shy. I mean, I know you're hurt, but you're awake. Mom said you might not wake up for a while. Behind her, Rachel Winters walked in slowly. She had a bandage on her forehead and moved carefully like everything hurt. When she saw Lucas, tears filled her eyes. I don't know how to thank you, she said, her voice breaking. The doctors told me what you did, what you went through to save us. Lucas didn't know what to say. Is your son okay? Tommy's doing much better. They have him on the right medication now. He's sleeping. Rachel came closer, wiping at her eyes. I'm so sorry, this is all my fault. I should have waited out the storm, but Tommy's breathing was so bad and I panicked and I thought I could make it to the hospital before it got worse, and now you're hurt because of my stupid decision. Hey, Lucas said firmly. You were trying to save your son. Any parent would have done the same. But your legs, Mia said quietly. The doctor said they're really broken. That it's going to take a long time to get better. Lucas looked at the girl. She had her mother's eyes, worried and guilty, like she thought this was somehow her fault too. I'll heal, he told her. Don't worry about me. But you wouldn't be hurt if you hadn't helped us, Mia said. You could have just stayed in your cabin where it was safe. Rachel put a hand on her daughter's shoulder. Mia's right. You risked everything for us, for people you don't even know. She paused. Except I found out something. Mr. Peterson at the general store. He told me it was you who paid for our groceries that day. The ones we had to put back. Lucas shifted uncomfortably. That was nothing. It wasn't nothing to us, Rachel said. It meant we ate that week. It meant Tommy got his medicine. And now you've saved our lives, at the cost of your own health. She pulled a chair over and sat down heavily, like the weight of it all was too much to stand under. I don't know how to repay something like this. You don't need to repay anything, I'm just glad you're all safe. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Mia reached out and carefully took Lucas's hand, avoiding the bandages on his fingers. Thank you, she whispered, for not leaving us there. Something in Lucas's chest cracked open. He'd spent 5 years avoiding connections, avoiding people, telling himself he was better off alone. But sitting here, looking at this girl's grateful face, her mother's tears, he realized something. He'd been running from the pain of losing his family, hiding from the guilt of not being there to save them. But pushing everyone away hadn't made the pain less. It had just made him empty. You're welcome, he said softly. Rachel stayed for a while, telling Lucas about the rescue, how the snowplow driver had called for an ambulance, and how emergency responders had been amazed at what he'd done. Word had already spread through Pine Ridge about the Mountain Man's miracle, as people were calling it. The whole town's been talking about you, Rachel said. You're a hero. Lucas shook his head. I'm not a hero. I just did what anyone would do. No, Rachel said firmly. Most people wouldn't have gone out in that storm. Most people wouldn't have pulled us 15 miles through the snow. Most people wouldn't have broken their own legs to keep us safe. What you did was extraordinary. After they left, Lucas was alone with his thoughts again. He should have felt good. He'd saved 3 lives. The family was safe. But all he could think about was his broken legs, his uncertain future, and the life he'd built that might be impossible now. More visitors came over the next few days. Dr. Peterson from the general store, the snowplow driver, a burly man named Frank who shook Lucas's hand carefully and said he'd never forget the sight of him standing in the middle of that road. Even the sheriff stopped by to get a statement and to tell Lucas the county was grateful for what he'd done. Lucas wasn't used to this much attention. It made him uncomfortable. He preferred being invisible, forgotten. But now everyone in Pine Ridge knew his name and his story. On the 3rd day, a local news crew showed up, asking if they could interview him. Lucas refused. He didn't want cameras, didn't want his face on television. The nurse had to escort them out when they kept pushing. Rachel visited every day, often bringing Mia. Tommy came once, still looking pale but breathing easier. The boy stood at the foot of Lucas's bed, his small face serious. I'm sorry you got hurt because of me, Tommy said. You didn't do anything wrong, kid. Sometimes things just happen. My dad used to say that when something bad happens, you have to find the good in it, Tommy said. Do you think there's good in this? Lucas looked at the boy, then at Rachel and Mia standing in the doorway. 3 people who might have died in that storm. 3 people who had their whole lives ahead of them now. Yeah, Lucas said. I think there might be. But later, after they left, when the nurse came to help him try sitting up and pain shot through his legs so badly he nearly blacked out, Lucas wasn't so sure. The doctor's words echoed in his mind. Permanent mobility issues, months of therapy, his independence, his solitude, his carefully controlled life, all of it slipping away. That night, Lucas stared at the dark ceiling of his hospital room. Outside, he could hear the muffled sounds of the hospital, footsteps, distant voices, machines beeping, so different from the silence of his mountain cabin. He thought about the climb he'd have to make now, not up a mountain but back to walking, back to independence. It seemed impossible. The pain was overwhelming, and according to the doctors, it would be like this for months. Lucas closed his eyes. He'd spent 5 years running from his past, from his failures, from his pain. Now he couldn't run at all. His legs were held together with metal pins. He couldn't even get out of bed without help. For the first time since waking up in the hospital, Lucas felt tears on his face. Not from physical pain, though that was bad enough, but from the weight of it all. The unfairness, the fear of what came next. He'd saved 3 lives. But what had it cost him? And would he ever be whole again? The questions haunted him as he finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, his broken legs throbbing with every heartbeat, his future more uncertain than it had been in 5 years. 2 weeks passed in the hospital, and Lucas started to understand just how much his life had changed. Physical therapy began, and it was brutal. Just trying to sit up sent waves of pain through his legs. The therapist, a patient woman named Claire, kept telling him it would get easier. Lucas wasn't sure he believed her. "You're pushing too hard," Claire said one morning as Lucas tried to do a simple leg lift. Sweat poured down his face from the effort. "I need to get back to normal," Lucas said through gritted teeth. "This is going to be your normal for a while. Fighting it just makes it harder." She helped him lower his leg back down. "Your body went through major trauma. Give it time to heal." But time was exactly what worried Lucas. Every day in the hospital was a day away from his cabin. Every day meant medical bills piling up. He'd asked about the costs once, and the look on the billing coordinator's face told him everything he needed to know. This was going to wipe him out financially. Rachel visited that afternoon as she did most days. She'd been released from the hospital after 3 days and had gone back to work at the diner almost immediately. She couldn't afford not to. "You look tired," Lucas said when she sat down. "Double shifts," Rachel admitted, trying to save up. "Tommy needs to see a specialist about his breathing, and our insurance doesn't cover much." Lucas felt a stab of guilt. Here he was worried about his own bills while this family was still struggling. "How are the kids?" "They're good. Mia asks about you every day. Tommy drew you a picture. He wanted me to bring it." She pulled out a piece of construction paper from her bag. It showed a stick figure pulling a sled through blue scribbles that were probably meant to be snow. At the top, in wobbly letters, it said, "Thank you for saving us." Lucas stared at the drawing, something tight in his throat. "He talks about you like you're a superhero," Rachel said softly. "Both kids do. They don't understand why you live alone up on that mountain. They think someone like you should have a family, friends, people around." "I had a family once," Lucas heard himself say. He hadn't talked about this with anyone in years. "My wife Lily and our daughter Danny. There was a climbing accident 6 years ago. They were on a weekend trip, and I was working a search and rescue call for someone else. By the time I got the news and got there, it was too late." Rachel's hand went to her mouth. "Oh, Lucas, I'm so sorry. I was supposed to protect them. That was my job as a husband and father, and I wasn't there when they needed me most." The words came out flat, emotionless. He'd said them so many times in his head that they'd lost their feeling. "I moved to the mountain after. Couldn't stay in our house, couldn't keep doing rescue work. Every time I tried to save someone, all I could think about was how I couldn't save them." "Is that why you live alone? You're punishing yourself?" Lucas didn't answer. He didn't need to. "What you did for us," Rachel said carefully. "Pulling us through that storm, breaking your legs to keep us safe. That wasn't punishment. That was love. The same love you had for your family, just directed at strangers who needed help." Before Lucas could respond, there was a knock at the door. Mr. Peterson from the general store came in, followed by Frank the snowplow driver and 3 other people Lucas recognized from town. "Sorry to interrupt," Peterson said, "but we needed to talk to you about something." Rachel stood up. "I should go." "No, please stay," Peterson said. "This concerns you too." He turned to Lucas. "The whole town's been talking about what you did, what you sacrificed, and we got to thinking that's not right. You shouldn't have to face this alone." "Face what alone?" Lucas asked warily. Frank stepped forward, holding a folder. "Your medical bills. We heard they're pretty steep, so we took up a collection. Started with just folks in Pine Ridge, but word spread. People from other towns heard about the mountain man's miracle. Story made it into the regional papers. Donations started coming in from all over." He handed Lucas the folder. Inside was a check. Lucas stared at the number, certain he was reading it wrong. "This can't be right." "It's right," Peterson said, grinning. "Enough to cover your hospital bills and then some. People wanted to help. You gave everything to save this family. Seemed only fair we give back." Lucas couldn't speak. The check in his hands was more money than he'd seen in years. Enough to pay for his medical care. Enough to modify his cabin if he needed accessibility changes. Enough to live on while he recovered. There's more, a woman Lucas didn't know said. She stepped forward. I'm Janet Torres. I run the Carpenters Guild in the county. We heard you do woodworking. Beautiful furniture, from what Peterson tells us. We'd like to help modify your cabin, make it accessible for you during recovery and after. Add ramps if you need them, widen doorways, whatever it takes, free of charge. Our members have already volunteered. I don't understand, Lucas said. Why would you do all this? Because you're one of us, Frank said simply. You live in these mountains same as we do, and mountain folk take care of their own. Rachel was crying quietly. Peterson put a hand on her shoulder. We didn't forget about you either, Rachel. The diner's been getting extra business from people wanting to support you, and there's some money in the fund for Tommy's specialist visits too. Rachel covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. Mia, who had been standing quietly in the hallway with Tommy, ran in and hugged her mother. Lucas looked around at these people, these near strangers who'd decided he was worth saving. For 5 years he'd isolated himself, convinced he was better off alone, convinced that caring about people just meant more pain when you lost them, but here they were, proving him wrong. I don't know what to say, Lucas managed. Don't say anything, Peterson said. Just get better. That's all we ask. After they left, Lucas sat holding that check, his hands shaking. Rachel had pulled herself together and was sitting back down, wiping her eyes. I made some calls earlier this week, she admitted. I might have told a few people about what you did for us, and maybe I mentioned you were facing huge medical bills. I hope you're not angry. Angry? Lucas shook his head. I'm overwhelmed. I'm not used to people caring about what happens to me. Well, you better get used to it, because after what you did, this whole county cares about you. She smiled. You can't go back to being invisible now. The next few days brought more visitors. People Lucas had never met came by to say thank you, to tell him his story had inspired them. A retired search and rescue coordinator stopped by and spent an hour talking shop, reminiscing about close calls and successful saves. But the most unexpected visitor came on Lucas's 3rd week in the hospital. A woman in her 50s with gray hair and kind eyes knocked on his door. She introduced herself as Helen Martinez. I work with the National Wilderness Rescue Association, she said. We train search and rescue volunteers across the country. I read about what you did and I looked into your background. You were one of the best rescue coordinators in Colorado before you retired. I didn't retire, Lucas said. I quit. There's a difference. Fair enough. But your skills, your experience, they're valuable. More valuable now, actually. Because you've been through something most rescue workers never face. You've been the person who needed saving. You've experienced catastrophic injury in the line of duty. That perspective is rare. I'm not sure I follow. Helen sat down. We need instructors. People who can teach not just the technical skills of rescue work, but the mental and emotional aspects. How to push through when your body says stop. How to make impossible decisions under pressure. How to live with the outcomes, good and bad. She paused. Your legs might be broken, Lucas, but your mind is sharp. Your experience is invaluable. Once you're recovered enough, I'd like to offer you a position as a training instructor. Lucas stared at her. You want to hire me? Like this? I want to hire you because of this. You pulled 3 people 15 miles through a blizzard on broken legs. That's not just physical strength. That's mental toughness we can't teach from a textbook. Our trainees need to learn from someone who's actually done the impossible. I'll need canes to walk. Maybe a wheelchair sometimes. I'm not going to be running up mountains anymore. You don't need to run up mountains to teach people how to save lives. You just need to share what you know. Helen pulled out a business card. Think about it. No pressure. But when you're ready, call me. We'd be lucky to have you. After she left, Lucas looked at the card for a long time. A job, a purpose. Something beyond sitting alone in a cabin, making furniture nobody would see. Rachel came by that evening and Lucas told her about the offer. Are you going to take it? She asked. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm ready to be around people all the time again. To be part of a team. Lucas, can I tell you something? And I mean this with all the love in the world. Rachel leaned forward. You saved us because you're good at caring about people. Because even after everything you've been through, you couldn't leave us to die in that storm. That's who you are. Hiding from it doesn't change it. What if I fail again? What if I teach someone and they get hurt because of something I did or didn't tell them? What if you teach someone and they save a life because of what you showed them? What if your experience, your pain, your broken legs, What if all of that means someone else gets to go home to their family? She reached over and squeezed his hand gently. You can't protect yourself from pain by avoiding life. Believe me, I tried that after my husband died. It doesn't work. You just end up lonely. Lucas thought about his cabin on the mountain. The silence. The solitude. 5 years of safety, but also 5 years of emptiness. I'm scared, he admitted. Good, that means whatever you decide, you'll take it seriously. Rachel stood up. The kids are starting school in the morning. Tommy's been practicing his reading because he wants to read you a story next time we visit. Mia's been asking if you like chocolate chip cookies because she wants to bake you some. They don't need to do that. They want to. Just like the town wanted to help with your bills. Just like the carpenters want to fix your cabin. Just like I want to be here every day making sure you're okay. She smiled. You spent 5 years alone, Lucas, but you're not alone anymore. And I don't think you really want to be. After she left, Lucas lay in his hospital bed thinking about everything that had happened. 3 weeks ago, he'd been living in isolation, convinced that was what he deserved. Now he had a community rallying around him, job offers, and a family that visited him every day like he was one of their own. His legs were broken. His future was uncertain. But for the first time in 6 years, Lucas felt something he'd almost forgotten: hope. He picked up Helen's business card and set it on the table beside Tommy's drawing. Tomorrow he'd start thinking about the future. Tonight he'd just let himself feel grateful to be alive, to be cared for, to matter to someone again. The mountain had been his refuge, but maybe it was time to come down. Maybe it was time to let people in, even if it was scary. Even if it meant risking pain again, because the alternative, he was starting to realize, wasn't safety. It was just another kind of dying. 6 weeks after the storm, Lucas was finally leaving the hospital. He sat in a wheelchair at the entrance, waiting for Rachel to bring the car around. The automatic doors opened and closed as people came and went, letting in bursts of cold February air. His legs were still in braces, but the doctor said he was healing well. Better than expected, actually. The physical therapy was working, though it was still painful. Claire had warned him he'd need months more work before he could walk without assistance, but at least he was going home. Home. Lucas wasn't sure what that meant anymore. The cabin was still there, up on the mountain, but the carpenters had been working on it for weeks. He'd seen pictures. They'd added a ramp to the front porch, widened the doorways, installed grab bars in the bathroom. His workshop had been reorganized so everything was within reach from a sitting position. It was thoughtful. It was generous, but it also felt like accepting that he might never be the same again. Rachel pulled up in her car and Frank appeared from nowhere to help Lucas transfer from the wheelchair to the passenger seat. It took longer than it should have, and Lucas hated every second of needing help. But eventually he was settled, his cane stowed in the back seat. Ready? Rachel asked. As I'll ever be. The drive to Pine Ridge felt different than it had 2 months ago. Back then, Lucas had been alone, isolated by choice, invisible to most of the town. Now people waved as they drove through. A woman sweeping the sidewalk outside the diner stopped to smile and call out. 3 kids walking home from school pointed and one yelled, "That's him! That's the mountain man." Lucas sank lower in his seat. Does everyone know? Pretty much, Rachel said, trying not to smile. You're famous around here. Local hero. Get used to it. They drove past the turnoff that led to Lucas's mountain cabin and kept going. Lucas looked at Rachel confused. I thought we were going to my place. We are. Just not yet. There's something you need to see first. She pulled into the parking lot of Pine Ridge Elementary School. The playground was empty, classes still in session. Rachel helped Lucas out of the car and handed him his canes. He was still getting used to them, the way they changed his balance, how much he had to think about each step. Why are we here? You'll see. Come on. They went inside, moving slowly down the hallway. Lucas's canes clicked against the tile floor, echoing in the empty corridor. Rachel led him to a classroom at the end of the hall and knocked quietly. A teacher opened the door, smiled when she saw them, and gestured for them to come in. Inside, about 20 kids sat at desks working on something. Lucas recognized Tommy and Mia immediately. When Mia saw him, her face lit up and she started to stand, but the teacher put a gentle hand on her shoulder. We have a special guest today, the teacher said to the class. This is Mr. Chen. Some of you might have heard about what he did during the big storm. Every hand in the room shot up. The kids started talking over each other, excited. Lucas felt his face get hot. The teacher laughed. Okay, one at a time. Who can tell me what makes someone a hero? A small boy in the front raised his hand. Heroes save people, that's right. What else? They're brave, a girl said, even when they're scared. Heroes help people even when it's hard, Mia added quietly. Even when it hurts them, the teacher nodded. And that's exactly what Mr. Chen did. He helped people even though it hurt him, even though it was dangerous. Because that's what heroes do. She turned to Lucas. The class has been working on a project. Would you like to see it? Before Lucas could answer, Tommy jumped up and ran to the wall. He pulled down a large poster board that had been hanging there. On it, in colorful letters, it said, "Thank you for showing us what courage looks like." Below that were drawings from every kid in the class. Pictures of Lucas pulling the sled, pictures of mountains and snow, pictures of him with a cape which made Lucas want